All right, for our last analysis, dun dun dun, sound the trumpets. All good things must come to an end eventually. For our last analysis, we're going to do Aphex Twin, Windowlicker. This, unlike a lot of his music, has a pretty easy chord progression to latch onto. I think we could look deeper into this song. If you know what this song is about, then it kind of makes sense. Anyway, never mind that. This one is in the key of C minor. It's got a bass line that it's a subtle bass line. It's not like a hit you over the head kind of Skrillex bass line, but it's a bass line that kind of sticks out a little bit, and it fits in with the chords in exactly the way we were just talking about. It has a little octave thing. It has a little passing tone. So let's hear a little bit of the song first. I'm just going to jump in where the kind of groove starts. Okay, that's enough. So you probably heard that we're hearing the same chord progression over and over and over, at least in this section of the song. He does go away from it a little bit later, but I just want to focus on this chord progression. So what I found in just picking through this was the key of C minor, but it's using primarily major chords, actually. So here's my bass line. So let's hear... Let's unsolo this. Let's loop just this first bar, or this first section. Let's hear the track. Let's not hear the chords yet, and we'll hear the bass line. So here's what I found for a bass line. So one thing that happens is this track is a little bit out of tune. So there's a little bit of a sharpness, especially in these upper notes, because the track is out of tune. And I don't know if that's just from the file conversion or if he out-of-tuned it on purpose. It's probably just the file conversion. But regardless, they are the right notes. So what I have here is a C. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So I have a C, and then second note here, another C. It just goes up an octave. So this is just a C, this whole section. Here I have an E flat or a D sharp, and then here another one. So just up an octave. So just took those two notes, split them up by the octave. So probably two different chords here, between here and here. And then the third section, we have a G sharp or an A flat. And that just sits still. And then we have this one little quick turnaround. So it hits an A flat again and then goes down to an F. Let's hear just the bass line. Cool. So what I think is happening is we have one chord here, one chord here, and one chord here. So there are really only three chords. We could call this F a different chord if we wanted to, but as I kind of plunked through this before I started recording the video, I don't think it is. I think that F is just kind of a passing bass note, but it's also kind of part of the chord. So we'll look at that when we get into the chords, which will be right now. So let's look at the chords. So here's what I found for the chords. Let's zoom in a little bit here so we can see this a little bit better. Good. Okay, so a C minor, and what I did here, so this is just our one chord, the C minor chord. And what I did here is I played the root and then the third and the fifth offset by just a touch, only because that's the way the keyboard part sounds in this. It's really a C minor chord all through this first section. I could have just done this, and it would have been accurate as well because we hear a C minor chord through this whole section. But I kind of like the way this sounds. It sounds more accurate. It sounds more like the track. So I just drew it in like that. Let's hear that with the track. Let's just hear everything. So the bass line, the chords that I came up with, and the track. Cool. So let's look at what these chords are. So again, on this chord, I just put it in the second half. It could be like this. The whole chord is sounding the whole time. It's just, I'm kind of emulating the keyboard part, and why not? I did the same thing down here. So the whole chord is happening here on the first beat, but I moved it over so that the piano would play kind of like the Rhodes kind of sound there. So the chords we have here are, we have a C minor chord, and it's the one chord in the key of C minor, so the first chord. Then we have a D sharp, or let's call it an E flat chord, and that's the third chord on our diatonic chord progression, so that's going to be major, right? I don't even think I need to draw this out anymore. You know this. You know the pattern. So here we have an A flat chord, or a G sharp chord, and that is going to be, if you count up the scale, that's going to be our 6. Oops. That's going to be our 6th chord in the scale. And if we do our diatonic chord progressions, you know that the 6th chord in the scale is major. So, now let's explain this F down here. This F could be two things in my mind. Could be just a passing bass note, just ba-boom. Actually, it could be three things in my mind. It could be a passing bass note. That's one option it could be. It could be a whole nother chord. So we could build an F chord on that. Or it could be a chord tone in this chord, in which case this chord that we see here is not the complete chord. It could be a 7th. Now, if we take this chord and we add a 7th, it's not going to be the right note. But if this was the root of the chord over here, so if we spelled a chord F, and we said this was the F, it would be F, F, G sharp, or A flat, C, D sharp, or E flat. So that would make a full F7 chord, and that would be a chord that's in the key. So we could call this whole chunk an F chord. That would be a legit thing to consider. I don't think that's our answer, though, because we very clearly hear this G sharp in the bass, and we don't get the F till there. So I don't think that's the correct answer. Let's try building a chord on the F. So let's assume that this is an F. So if we go up our scale, there's our 3rd and there's our 5th. We actually have two notes in common, right? Because this is the same chord if we added a 7th. Let's hear if that sounds good to us. Possibly. I'm going to say no, only because we don't hear this chord re-attacked here. So these notes don't get attacked, and they're two of the same notes that are already ringing anyway from the previous chord. So more likely that it's just a passing note in the bass line that happens to complement the chord quite well, which is why he chose it, because it sounded good. That gives us our 3 chords. That gives us a C minor for the first half of the first bar, an E flat major for the second half of the first bar, and an A flat major for the whole second bar with this added note F in the bass. Which reminds me, we could call it something else. We could call it A flat over F, right? That's probably the best name for it. So we would say here, A flat over F would be a really good name for it, right? Because we have this A flat chord, major chord, with an F in the bass for the second part. So over here, this would be just an A flat chord. This would be an E flat chord, and this would be a C minor chord. So it's actually a pretty simple chord progression, not something we associate with Aphex Twin and the word simple, usually. Okay, so now that we have this, we can use this for a good chunk of this opening stuff. It keeps going for quite a ways. So let's hear just a little bit of it. I'm not going to go through the whole song. Unloop it. Okay, so it didn't happen here. This was kind of a no chord section right here. And then it's, so now, a lot like another track we did earlier, now he's taking that chord progression and sort of like chopping it up and using little parts of it here and there. And I think he's going to do that for quite a ways into the song. So a surprisingly easy one, Windowlicker by Aphex Twin.